So what information does a car insurance quote actually require for you to get a price? And how accurate can that price be if you don't give them all of the information? Well, we're going to go over that right now and explain what all you have to give an agent when you're doing a quote and what you can reasonably expect, whether you're doing it online or in person or over the phone, what kind of contact or what kind of spam, so to speak, that you'll be getting. Hey guys, Mark with Think Insurance, and we're going to dive right into the subject. This is a common thing that I see online where people want to give the data, but they've been burned. They've gone on to these .com websites and they filled out what they thought was a quote, and it really just forced them to get 1,000 phone calls. And it just continues over and over. I actually work with a company and have worked with a company that sells leads, and they don't just sell it to one company, they sell it to multiple companies. So when you're doing your due diligence, you call 3 times for the first day, a few times for the third day, maybe once on the 5th day, a couple weeks later, a few months later, until that lead is eventually gone. Your information is really not useful until a year later. And if you're getting that 3, 4, 5 times over, now you're talking about 15 phone calls in the first day and 12 calls the next day, and so on and so forth, depending on how often each company follows up with you. Now, they normally have great information for you, but it gets overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff. It's not like the companies I've worked with where we work with 10 plus to 17 plus different companies where you can get a quote across the board. So what information do you have to give them? If you're going to do those online quotes, typically what I would recommend is fill out as much as you want, as much information as you can. Feel free to put your email in there. That's usually not a common thing for them to worry about because they usually don't follow up a whole lot through email. You usually get one quote or at least some contact information or contact us, maybe a couple of them, but it usually dies off pretty quickly. And it's easier for you to block those. You can request to be removed from the list, and they legally have to remove you if it's a legitimate company. As far as your phone number, if you're going online, it makes sense if you trust the company. For example, I have a link below to a company that is not selling your information to multiple companies. Although they do shop multiple companies, you're typically going to get a contact right away or a phone call right away, whichever you prefer. And that's just the route that we go. So we don't tend to sell the information to companies that are going to multi-blast out to you. But most companies do. So here's the problem is you need to remove your phone number from the ones you don't know. So if you don't trust the process or the company you're working with, just take the phone number off or change it by a digit. And they just can't call you because it's a bad phone number. And most of them, oddly enough, there is a little bit of a loss there, is they actually won't even email you. Some companies don't have systems set up where you might miss out on some quotes, but I feel like you're still going to find the route that you're looking for, even if you do lose out on some of those options. So the information they typically need is really helpful to get an accurate quote to have your name, your address, along with zip code. Mainly because each person has what's called an insurance score. And some states actually require your driver's license to quote, but most of them don't anymore. It's typically just name, address, and zip code. And what that allows them to do is not just pull up your zip code, because you could technically get a quote without your name. You could make up Bill Smith and you could quote at your address or the address next door. And because you're in the same zip code, you're going to get kind of a close rate. But because an insurance score is now a very important piece, is it kind of semi-runs credit. It's a soft hit, so it doesn't actually check your credit. You're not going to get strikes on it. It's not going to affect any loans that you're getting. It's something that just goes in the background, checks the last credit that's ran, and does its own little calculations. There's a whole bunch of pieces that it runs to verify your data. And that will create an insurance score for you specifically. So when you don't give your name and your address in a previous address, if you haven't lived there for more than 3+ years, then it's not going to give you as accurate of a quote. If you don't give your driver's license number, some companies run reports ahead of time, so you're not going to get your tickets and your motor vehicle reports and any accidents you have ran. If you haven't had any of those, then don't worry about it. That's all those are doing for you. You don't need to give your license until you actually go to purchase that policy if you have a clean record. The last piece they need is the year, make, and model of your vehicle. You don't have to give them the VIN number, but if you don't know the trim level, whether it's the LT or the LTZ or whatever trim that you made, the all-wheel drive with this engine, there's hundreds of different cars out there. I mean, GM makes one vehicle that has 7 different trims, and so those do cost different as far as the repairs go, because leather versus cloth, navigation versus non-navigation, there's thousands of dollars difference in the coverage that you're getting. So that can skew it a little bit based on the vehicle. But also the VIN number will give them a vehicle history. They can also see when you purchased the vehicle, and when some companies tie that to your name, they have discounts based on how long you've owned the vehicle. Now that's a fairly rare piece, so you're not going to typically see that very often. There's only 1 or 2 companies that I even know of that cares about that part. If you're not wanting to give the VIN number out, I fair to say you're not going to have any problems with it. You're most likely going to be accurate either way you go. The last piece is the coverages. You just got to select what you want as far as coverages, and that's really the only information that you have to give. You don't need to go over any other information with the people. They do ask a lot of questions if you call on the phone, and if you're making that contact, it's going to be a lot easier for you to give that information. Most people do, but at the end of that process, there's not a whole lot more that they need. If you are interested, I will link below that company that I was speaking of that does offer multiple quotes. Otherwise, you may want to watch my other video, which goes over the different types of quoting, how to do a quote online, and also how to quote with an agent versus doing a quote virtually or online and getting the best rates for that. I also have several pieces on this channel that will go over discounts, so if you're looking to get the best deals and rates, you may want to subscribe, hit the bell icon so you get notified of any updates that come up. Otherwise, I'm Mark with Think Insurance. I'll see you in the next one.